everyone, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and those who fall in between, to InGroove. InGroove is a music podcast that focuses on discussions of what else but music, everything from the bestsellers to the unknowns, including everything in between. I'm joined by my always present co-host, Dan Griffin.
Yo!
And our special guest for this episode, Branden the Knees.
Hello.
He was on the Prague episode.
You've heard from Branden the Knees before, so he doesn't need to introduce himself. Everyone's well familiar with you at home, Branden. What do you think about this?
I'm pleased.
Glad to be known.
I'm glad to receive my recognition at
Yeah.
any and all.
And speaking of recognition, we got a beef. We got a few bands. We each picked one. Bands that don't get their recognition. Mm-hmm. As Rodney Dangerfield said, don't get no respect.
I no respect there.
Hey. We're going to talk about this at the end of the show, but we're going to go through our picks for bands that we love. We love them. You've always loved them. We'll stand by them till the end. And other people just can't get into it.
They don't get the credit they deserve.
They don't get the credit they deserve. But that's for the end of the show. Before that, we're talking about our main discussion. This is sort of a special episode. We're focusing on two releases from this year, 2014, the year of our Lord. AD 2014.
Okay.
The year that will soon be remembered as the year that shit went down. Because two great releases that came out this year that we're talking about from our good friend, Neil Cicierega.
Like we know him personally.
Yeah. The first one came out earlier in the year. It was called Mouth Sounds.
Can anyone do the drop, the raindrop? Oh, wait. I heard one of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Branden the Knees' Mouth.
Thank you.
And the most recent one, which came out, Branden, when did this most recent one come out? Last week?
Last week, yeah.
Last week?
Very recently.
Very recently.
Right around the corner recently.
And it is Mouth Silence, the sequel.
Oh no, that came out on Saturday.
Saturday?
Saturday, yeah.
That's gonna.
What is last week?
That is going to have no relevance to anyone listening to the show, but
True.
just for trivia's sake, we're recording this on a Wednesday, 7/23 in 2014.
Wednesday.
So it's 6 p.m. right now, and we are talking about, yes, Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence, both mashup mixtape releases from, like we said, Neil Cicierega.
Fellow Bostonian, correct? Isn't he from Boston?
He's a masshole.
He does. He lives in a brownstone in Boston.
He lives in Boston now, because he used to be a
Boston.
Kingston resident, from what I know.
Kingston, Mass, huh? So that's not far from where we are.
No, he's very local.
But, yeah, because we're Boston folk. But,
Yeah.
well, these are these are mixtape albums, but just general Neil Cicierega, sort of one of the godfathers of internet culture, I think.
In his own words, he is an online semi-celebrity you won't forget.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of himself. That applies.
Neil Cicierega, Hayakugo Juichi, 2003.
Yeah, one of the turning points in the internet, I would say. The defining animutation sort of established some of the internet culture earliest memes. You can thank him for endless Chuck Norris jokes, more or less. You can thank him for Colin Mockery's face everywhere. That's Neil Cicierega, the mark he has left on the world. Musically, some of the early stuff he released was under the name Trapezoid. Some electronic music, DIY electronica. Some interesting stuff, but got his most, recognition under the name Lemon Demon, which is originally, himself, just a one-man project, and eventually evolved to be a live band with several members. And they've released, what, 4, 5, 6 albums?
4 or 5, yeah.
We, Clown Circus, Candle Factory,
Dinosaur Orchestra,
Hip to the Java Bean, Damn Skippy, and View Monster. 6?
View Monster, 6, yeah.
Waiting for that 7th one, but Neil Cicierega...
Possibly 7 and 8 in one.
Possibly. But...
Potter Puppet Pals, right?
Potter Puppet Pals he was responsible for. And New Kids on the Rock, one of my favorite web series. That was very funny, with his friends Ryan Murphy and... What's the other fellow's name?
No, he's only in New Kids, so...
No, he's in some of the other
he's
stuff.
in some of them.
But his old masshole buddies.
He doesn't have the personality of Ryan Murphy, for sure.
Oh, I like him. He did... Kevin, his name's Kevin. I forget his last name. I love the video he did, Kooky Kevin's Crazy Car Lot. Look it up, folks! But anyway, the main feature of what we're talking about is these... you could say these are the culmination of internet culture. He sort of made the ultimate postmodern internet act of artistic expression in these 2 releases. Branden, what is the concept of mouth sounds?
So mouth sounds, the precursor to mouth silence is this...
How do you describe it?
I would describe it as larger than life. It is an homage to the time when All Star broke out of its own universe and into ours. You see, there are 2 parallel universes, pre-1999 and post-1999. Now, Neil Cicierega explains this on his Tumblr account. And in the pre-1999 universe, the only song in existence is All Star by Smash Mouth. And in the post-1999 universe, other songs are able to exist. Because... Oh, I'm explaining this incorrectly. In the post-1999 universe, other songs exist, but on the date that All Star was released, it broke the barrier from its own universe and came into ours. And Neil Cicierega in Mouth Sounds is trying to pay homage to this by mixing a great many songs with Smash Mouth hits.
Mashups.
Mashups. And essentially what he has created is...
Smash-ups, if you will.
Smash-ups. Mouth sounds. What he essentially has created is a postmodern mindfuck of irreverent humor through musical fusion of the genius variety. I'm sort of at a loss for words in describing what hearing the sound for the first time is like, and I don't want to give away the surprises that come along the way, but Dan, you just heard this for the first time recently.
Yes.
What was your first impression when you first started hearing these tracks? What were you thinking?
It was very compelling from the first listen. From the first listening of, the first song. It was just like hearing some of the songs together. Like is it on this album or the other one? It's Close to You by the Carpenters, which is an early 70s song, mixed with Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. That was like, if you just think, you're like, what? How are these songs going to mesh? But it does in like such a brilliant way, and it works. And
Yeah, I think what makes it really, really interesting is that, yes, it is, this sort of ironic internet joke, especially with Mouth Sounds and all the Smash Mouth references and the All-Star everywhere.
And Walking on the Sun.
Walking on the Sun and all those songs endlessly recycled over some of the most crazy of other songs to be referenced, all the way to the Full House theme.
Oh my god.
It seems so much like a gimmick, but the more and more you listen, it reveals, Neil Cicerega's innate ability to, deconstruct melody, choral structure, and to craft, very, very infectious pop music, which we know he's more than capable of from his Lemon Demon stuff. But here he really, shows, he proves without a shadow of a doubt that this guy understands musicality. He understands how, different sounds interact, how the backing track of a song interacts with the melody, harmony, counterpoint, all are exhibited through these samples of very recognizable songs, which sort of brings to the forefront how capable and how skilled he is at combining sounds. Because with an original composition, oftentimes listeners won't hear how the different parts are interacting because they hear it as a whole. But when he's taking, like with that example, the melody from the Carpenter's track combined with the guitar riff of the Soundgarden song, and with a different backing beat and other samples coming in, and you hear them all gel so perfectly into something that sounds like an original song.
Yeah, it all seems to work very well.
Right.
You really see how he's so skilled at, building, constructing, and understanding, how pop music is structured and made. So
he definitely put a very unique spin on it, and I really enjoyed listening to the album. So.
It's his personal touch. It's the Neil Cicierega brand coming through with that personal spin that you're hearing. He's always had his own little quirks, and you can see that from his humor.
Yeah, definitely.
Only he would think to mash a classical composer with Smash Mouth, and then in a couple tracks
segue into
later,
Modest Mouse.
into Modest Mouse, and then into some John Lennon.
And into Will Smith, and
it's insane.
It's a mashup of...
To name a few, there's more.
Pop music, and cycled through this, ironic internet kind of culture. But the thing I've always admired about Neil, right from the beginning, when I first got into him back in the day when, Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny was a big thing, back in the 05, 06 flash world of the internet.
Like the birth of YouTube era.
The birth of YouTube era.
Before YouTube.
Before YouTube really became a thing.
Newgrounds.
Newgrounds, when flash culture was, the most prominent source of entertainment on the internet. This is before full video streaming. Has been that his brand of humor and the references that he uses and the pop culture callbacks he uses never are a sort of spiteful, ironic type of callback with so much that we see on the internet now, where things are just referenced for the sake of being referenced, or it's out of mocking or, making fun of things. When, Neil Cicierega makes a song like Brody Quest, and he puts Adrian Brody in all these weird situations, not only does it seem like he's legitimately, interested in Adrian Brody and finds some kind of allure and appeal to him, but he makes a legitimately fascinatingly catchy pop electronica track to go with it that perfectly complements the visuals, and there's nothing sarcastic or ironic or mean-spirited about it. And with something like Mouth Sounds, conceptually you might be thinking, oh, this is just one in-joke, one internet meme after another, laid one on top of the other. How many irreverent things can we put together just for the sake of putting them together? But what makes it really fascinating, which makes me return to it again and again, is that he actually does craft these entirely fresh pop songs out of it, and that he actually, seems to pay some respect to, of all people, Smash Mouth. When he, mashes up Imagine and All-Star, it seems like the most ridiculous,
it sounds silly, but
counterintuitive
it won't be
thing.
when you hear it.
But when you hear it, it makes total musical sense. Yeah. And he gives it the respect of a full track and a full, well-produced, understood piece of pop music.
Yeah.
And it's that respect and that, sense of artistry that he has, even in the most silly of things. I always appreciate an artist who can make something very silly but be serious about it. That's a fine line to walk.
Going back to the whole Brody Quest thing, Neil Cicierega always encourages his own brand of sort of what were you saying? Non-ironic.
Non-ironic
irony.
postmodernism, you know.
Non-spiteful irony, and just with Brody Quest, when he released it and people started mixing his beat from Brody Quest with all these other tracks like Booty Quest or Soulja Quest or Snoop Quest.
One of my favorite is the Wild Thornberrys mashup, Nigel Quest.
Nigel Quest. he encourages it, and he just encourages people to create for the sake of creativity. And it's not just his... It is his personal beliefs, and he tries to reflect them positively towards the people who look up to him. He's a very inspiring person outside of his musical ability.
Yeah, I would say so. And the fact that he's released Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence entirely free. Stream it, download it, do whatever you want with it, you know, take it in a new direction, remix the mashup album, remash up the mashup album. Somebody is going to mash these two albums together. I know it. It's coming. You're going to have Mouth Sound Silence or, you know, something like that. But, you know,
Silent sounds.
The sound of mouth
he's
sounds.
one of the true, you know, sort of proponents of, you know, free speech internet, of, you know, fair use of taking things and doing something fresh with it. And nobody listening to this album, I think, would really think, oh, that didn't take a lot of work. He just sort of threw two things together. It's a fresh musical ideas out of, you know, these callbacks and these postmodern references. But real quick, Brandon, favorite Lemon Demon album, favorite Lemon Demon song. I want two things. Favorite album, favorite song.
Favorite album, Dinosaur Orchestra. It's looking back, it's probably not as good as some of the other ones, but it's the first one I heard.
Oh, really?
First one I heard in its entirety, yeah, and just a real throwback for me in this day and age. And favorite song.
That's a tough one.
That's a real tough one. Probably either Indie Cindy and the Lo-Fi Lullabies. No. I actually know this one. Indie Cindy would probably be number 3. Action Movie Hero Boy would probably be number 2.
Nice.
And number 1 would be...
Don't steal my vibe. Come on, what is it?
Hold on, wait. I need to think of the name. It's been so long. Imaginary Friend, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, Imaginary Friend. I just love it. It speaks to me.
You didn't steal my vibe.
Imaginary Friend is beautiful.
Yeah, a track off of Dinosaur Orchestra. I like Dinosaur Orchestra a lot. I mean, this is pretty much just saying to everyone out there, you know, check out his stuff. It's really not, you know, as goofy or as silly or as gimmicky as you might guess from, you know, him being an internet semi-celebrity or whatever. He really does craft, you know, some genuinely entertaining and well-done pop albums. I gotta go with, for my favorite, it's really tough, but I think I'm gonna go with the latest View Monster. I think, you know, that's
Good
my
stuff.
favorite. There's a lot of good tracks off that, and I like the way it flows with those transition tracks. It feels like the most conceptually tight of his albums, the most, you know, well realized.
It definitely is. You can see like how well his music has matured over the years.
Yeah.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
And yeah, I like a lot of tracks off of that. Tracks off of Dinosaur Orchestra and tracks off of Damn Skippy is a really good one. And there's some really great songs off Hit to the Java Bean. But my favorite song is a to date non-album track. I don't know if it will make it onto the next one or what. But
Can you imagine?
my favorite Lemon Demon song is Eighth Wonder. Definitely. I check this song out. I'm also a big fan of Scatterbrained.
Oh, I love Scatterbrained.
It's a really good one. But
I love that picture of Eddie Murphy's head on a tractor. That if you look it up on YouTube, that's what's associated with it.
But yeah, Eighth Wonder is sort of his symphonic pop epic track about the ghost of a mongoose living in the walls and haunting people, or something of the sort. But
Can I change my answer to 2 trucks?
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm just kidding. 2 trucks is fantastic, though.
But basically, we wanted to do this sort of shorter episode, this more concise episode, just to sort of talk about this because we've been listening to these 2 releases throughout this year. And with the last one just coming out, like Branden said, Saturday, we wanted to sort of alert you to it. So you can check these out. They're on SoundCloud. Go to Neil's Tumblr, which is, I believe, like I said earlier, called Neilblur.
Neilblur.
Right, Branden? That's,
yes.
Yeah.
His current mood is warm.
But yeah, we usually don't talk about sort of very indie music like this or sort of internet music, if you want to put it in that little box. But, for this shorter episode, we thought we'd touch on it. But now, so check out Neil's stuff and let us know what you thought. But now we're going to talk about, like we said, the bands and the artists, the songwriters, the people that get no respect. No respect.
Or not as much as they deserve.
Not as much as they deserve. These are, bands, artists we really like. We've always liked that, we like more than other people seem to, And they usually don't get mentioned among the greats of their respective time periods.
Yeah.
But we'd like to put them there. And if you haven't heard these artists, check them out. This is stuff to listen to. So I'm going to let Dan take it off.
Okay.
With his band that gets no respect.
Okay. Yeah, so...
Underrated.
The band that I picked, they're pretty well known.
Yeah.
But I like them a lot more than I think most people do. I think most people think, yeah, they're a pretty good band. But I don't know. I've always had a liking to this band. This is they've been around since the mid-'70s. They're still touring, and they still sound good from what I've heard. And that band is a little band from Chicago, Illinois called Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick, yeah. Cheap Trick, yeah. You guys probably know them. Well, you definitely know some of their songs. I Want You to Want Me, Surrender, from the Guitar Hero 2 classic.
Right.
Yeah. The Dream Police. Those are like the biggest hits I can think of. They obviously have more well-known songs, but those are I think the big 3. They're a good little pop band. Sort of has some elements of hard rock in there. Would you say a little hard rock, Jarrod?
Yeah, hard rock, sort of, forebringer of power pop or something like that.
Yeah.
A heavier pop sound.
A great singer, Robin Zander. A great guitarist, Rick Nielsen. They, like I said, they've been around for a long time. They're still pretty active in the scene. I think they still release. I haven't heard too much of their recent stuff as far as albums are concerned.
It's all right.
I still see. Occasionally I'll check like Cheap Trick Live 2014. They still sound good, and I definitely think that they're one of the great classic rock bands from the late '70s onwards.
If someone was going to get into Cheap Trick, how should they start? Album, single, what should they listen to first?
If you like those songs I named, I'm sure you know them, then I think you like the band. But I think a starting place is probably the live album at Budokan.
Yeah, I agree.
That is a fantastic live album. It came out, I believe, in 78 or 79. And that's the album with I Want You to Want Me. Like the radio hit that everyone, I want you to want me. Like where he introduces it like that. 78. And, they basically had a few albums out before then. They had the first album, the self-titled album. They had In Color. They had Heaven Tonight. And then Dream Police was the one after the Budokan album. And one other thing. They do Beatles covers very well. Yeah. I will say that. There's certain bands that do them better than others. They, I want to say within the last 10 years, they did a show where they played the whole Sgt. Pepper. And they did it well. They sounded good. But yeah, if you guys like, if you guys like hard rock, classic rock, or power pop, that sort of thing, I definitely recommend Cheap Trick. So give them a listen, and I hope you enjoy.
All right, I'm gonna take it off with my band that gets no respect. They sort of get unfairly lumped into the post-grunge category with bands like Creed, and who else is in that category? You know what?
Stone Temple Pilots?
No, Stone Temple Pilots is grunge. Like Nickelback, Creed, like that sort of period of, grunge getting more commercial. But I don't really see them fitting into that.
I don't at all,
a very, to be honest. Very different sort of sound than those bands, and a more distinctive sound than those more commercial, accessible bands. Not to say this band wasn't commercially successful. They did have mainstream success with their second album, Throwing Copper. But
yeah, that's a good one.
But Live is a band that I've always really, really loved. They were, I remember when their last album, if it does prove to be their last album, Songs from Black Mountain came out in 2006. I got it when it came out over the summer, and that was the album of the summer of 2006. That album,
I remember,
was on all the time in my world, and I listened to them all the time. They're a band that has always stuck out to me as very genuine with their, Ed Kowalczyk, the frontman's lyricism and his vocals.
Love his voice.
Very distinct, and had a very, interesting lyrical style that would, deal with, social issues and religion and, sort of broad symbolism, with a really interesting songwriting approach that stressed in terms of alternative rock, a very, quiet sound at times, a very, sort of mellow, introspective sound, and a band that would always, evoke progression in their songwriting, that would have, 5-minute songs that built from, a low murmur to a raging scream at the end. In terms of getting into them, I would recommend Throwing Copper, their second album. This had
I Alone and all
a lot of radio hits in All Over You, I Alone, Selling a Drama, Lightning Crashes, big album that, like I said, doesn't get the respect it deserves. This is a classic dollar bin album. Go through any dollar bin, you'll find it for, like I said, $1, and it is well worth it. Buy 3 copies, give it to your friends,
Why haven't I received my copy yet, Jarrod?
Hey, it is what it is.
I think we're going to be the 2 that get it today. So.
Yeah, but I also really liked, like I said, Songs from Black Mountain as a big personal, connection for me. The album is very close to my heart, and I like all their LPs more or less. But
you saw them in concert, right?
I did see them in concert in a bill with Blues Traveler and Collective Soul, and they were the headliners, and they put on a great show. And I've also seen Ed Kowalczyk solo in concert because he has left the band, and I believe they have a new singer. But
who can replace a legend?
I know, and he was very much so the voice of that band, one of the primary songwriters and lyricists. So to see him leave,
big shoes to fill. Yeah,
I'm interested if they come out with a new album, what it sounds like, what direction they'll go in, whether this new frontman will bring a new personality to the band, or whether they'll try to, egg off sort of Kowalczyk's legend in the band. But I really hope they do try to come out with some new material, or, maybe a spin-off project or something. Ed Kowalczyk's 2 solo albums that have come out are also very good. And, I don't know, they're a band I've always really liked. And I'd like them to get some more respect. So that's my plea. Branden, what's your band that gets no respect?
All right. For me, it is a band that I have listened to for a very long time now. I've heard all of their albums multiple times, and then a few times more than that. They have one song that was a major hit. You will know it as More Than Words.
had a couple other hits, but that's the big one.
Yeah, like Wholehearted was pretty big. In short, not their best work. That it's gotten
Still pretty good,
commercial success. Yeah, it's decent, but it's not Extreme, which is the band. Extreme, they get no respect, which ironically is the name of one of their songs.
Oh, that's
from
true.
Waiting for the Punchline.
No respect.
No respect. Yeah. But they are
Another Boston band.
They are another Boston band. They don't just have concept albums. They are a concept band, which I love.
They have a conceptual discography.
Yes, they have a conceptual discography.
Which, I never knew this, and about a year ago you told me this.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
And you laid down the,
This is
you laid down the law on what the conceptual discography is and what it means.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
And you blew my mind, Branden. I've never been able to listen to their music the same, and now it's all the more good for it. It's so rich and so, forward thinking and smart.
So, Jarrod has been asking to say where you should start if you want to get into these bands, and I'm going to say start from the first album.
I agree.
Because Extreme, they just build. What Extreme story is the only story worthy of being called Extreme, and that is the story of life. It's their first album is all about your schooling years. It's about being a boy. It's about growing up with your parents over your shoulders and having to go to school when you don't want to, and maybe skipping classes a couple times.
It's the rowdy childhood album.
Your rowdy childhood.
This is blowing my mind right now. I never knew that.
Yeah,
then
just wait.
You're not a child forever, so eventually you start to grow up, you start to fall in love, and you start to run that rat race with Decadence Dance, going right into that next album, Pornography. You're an adult. You're probably a little bit rude.
You're sexual awakening.
Sexual, political awakening. You don't see much of the politics in that second album. It's more of a little bit lusty and a little bit sort of just.
Well, let's just say if James Joyce's seminal novel Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man was a hair metal album, it would be Extreme 2 Pornography.
Like, we're looking at songs like He-Man Woman Hater. Every guy has gone through that phase where he despises the female and is all about, like, male sexuality.
But he'll do a total U-turn to, like, falling madly in love with a woman in a song like Wholehearted or More Than Words.
More Than Words. What's the song? The slow one? The New York City.
Look it up, Jared. The New York City do.
Well, there's another slow song on the album.
No, it's the one right before More Than Words, though. I can't remember what it's called. And then you got like Little Jack Horny. That's my personal favorite song off that album.
That's a really good song.
Get the Funk Out on that album too, right? Or is that on the first one?
Get the Funk Out. It's all about that sexuality of your young adulthood.
Are you talking about Song for Love, Branden?
No, the other
Not that one? When I First Kissed You?
Yes, When I First Kissed You. I was about to say that too. But we're also looking at songs like It's a Monster. I'm pretty sure that's talking about sin as a whole. It might be talking about the corruption of wealth too. Either way, it fits in with the theme of the album, and we move on to 3 sides to every story.
Which is, in my opinion, their masterpiece.
It is a very, very good album. And this is the album that would justify them being underrated, because this is smack dab in the middle of Extreme as the story has progressed thus far. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't release another album to keep the sort of balance that they have going right now. Mm-hmm. And you'll see another reason why I don't believe that later.
So what is 3 sides to every story about conceptually?
Conceptually, this is your adulthood. This is when you're starting to or rather the transition between your young adulthood to your adulthood. This one's more politically fueled, but it has a very political half, and then it also has a very
well, it's a three-sided album. There's the first third is a very political sort of approach. The second one is a very personal.
I'm going to go ahead and say that they're halves. There's a political half and a personal half, like you said, and
I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
So the political half is more of seeing not only corruption in politics but also reason, and it's sort of questioning war and motivations while also justifying the war and motivations for various reasons. You'll have warheads where it's a bunch of just bombs falling and you're running around in Korea or whatever. It's fighting, and then you'll also have Peacemaker Die with Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech smack dab in the middle of it to make you cry.
Yeah, one of the best tracks on the album.
It's very emotional. You can see, like, maybe you should question why we went to war in Korea, but you can also see why Martin Luther King went to war. Sometimes it's necessary. Mm-hmm. And there's wars against people and also wars against ideologies. And then you have the second half, which is the personal half of the album, where we're looking more at... It's more introspective about why can't I do X? Why can't I fall in love? Why can't I spend time with the person I love? And it's just sort of pondering who you are as a person. It asks, is God dead at one point? It's just an uncertainty that comes to everyone's lives at some point. And and that sort of personal ideology is very emotional versus the rational sense of the first half of the album. But then we get the third side, and I sort of view this as separate from the rest of the album.
Yeah.
It's a third side, and it is called Everything Under the Sun. It's a 3-part, 20-some-odd minute prog epic that I've listened to well over 200 times.
Oh, me too, yeah.
And it's, from what I can see, it's the truth. It's just...
Which is what it's subtitled as, the truth.
Yeah. It's the truth about everything. It's not politically motivated. It's not something tainted by emotion. It's, you get up in the morning, you live your life, and you ask yourself things, and that's all just part of it. And eventually you will come to realize that, and I think that's what they're trying to say in that whole song. And I feel like I'm understating the power of this song right now.
You can't really express in words the significance of... You have to experience that song yourself and really sit down and listen to it.
More than words, pun intended. I'm just.
I believe we talked about that song on the show before last time you were on, Branden. I think we both said pretty much that was, the two of us had the same favorite song of all time, and it's pretty much that song.
I can't recommend that song enough. It's the icing on the cake for that album, and you really have to view it as like there's two halves, but then there's the truth to bind them both and separate them both at the same time. It's all about that sort of duality yet singularity of the real world versus your internal world.
I always think of this album as a sort of humanity gone to court type of ordeal. Mm-hmm. You have the prosecution, the defense, and then you have the judge overruling at the end. Whether he's God or whether he's just a philosopher or a poet or the artist, the face of artistry in culture. This album is to me, a musical Rashomon. This is look at every perspective, and at the end, the conclusion they come to, not in a nihilistic way or in a cynical way, but the conclusion that they come to is, who cares? Which is the subtitle of the last part of the last song, Who Cares? And
Like, am I
it's
ever-
sort of an understanding that these differing perspectives that exist within both society and the world and within the singular self are essential to the way life as we know it functions.
Yeah, it's what it comes down to is like, you can ask yourself, am I ever going to change? You can question why you can't do things. You can question why you get up out of bed every single morning. But what it comes down to is the only one who cares is yourself and your reason. I don't even know.
Yeah, which is another takeoff of who cares. If
Who
you
cares?
if you give up,
care.
then nobody will care except you. You have to find your own truth to each situation. I mean, that last segment of the album, that last track, brings up, religious references, very personal, introspective lyrics. It's kind of a hodgepodge of everything addressed in the album, but in a very poetic and a very ambiguous and sort of a way that's open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. And then we get on to their fourth album. This one is called Waiting for the Punchline. Thank you. Waiting for the Punchline. This is a very cynical album. I'll put that right out there. This is your old age. This is after even you have stopped caring, so much so that you don't even ponder killing yourself.
Wow.
It's
Whereas on the last album we have a song, God Isn't Dead, ? On this album, the opening track is called There Is No God.
There Is No God. Just look at the titles from some of the songs.
Followed by a song called Cynical Fuck.
There is no God, cynical fuck, no respect. This is your classic old age. And then you got Midnight Train, though. That song's beautiful. What's that doing there?
Yeah, Midnight Express.
Midnight Express, oh.
And Waiting for the Punchline, I think, is a very fit title. It's sort of, I've gone through this shit.
You're
I've
just
lived
waiting.
this life. I got no respect. When is it going to come around where this at least makes some semblance of sense? Or
Yeah,
I
you're
see
just
the
waiting.
reasoning behind these mechanisms.
At this point, you're not even part of this world anymore. You're just waiting to be removed from it. That's what it comes down to. You've gone through life. This is the end. You're waiting for the punchline, which brings you to the
Great
last
title.
the last album, Saudade de Rock. It's a Portuguese derived title. And what Saudade is I'll start this off by saying there's no English equivalent to the word saudade. It's this longing, this desire. It's a very romantic sort of just passion. There's no way to describe it with the English language. That's why it's a beautiful word that the Portuguese have that I wish we had an equivalent to. And this album, it came out a few years after Waiting for the Punchline.
A lot of years after.
13
years.
13 years, wow. And I think that this was sort of an afterthought for Extreme. They didn't realize that they had to go. They might have realized, and it would be even better if they sort of timed it for that specific reason. But what this album is just them reflecting on life, on all their past accomplishments, on just the life that they've lived. You have tracks like like Star, probably alluding to their More Than Words days when they were huge. And then you also have like can't see the tracks for this. I don't remember the names of most of them. Yeah, you've got
Comfortably Dumb.
Yeah.
yeah, you got like Comfortably
That's
Dumb,
hilarious.
Ghost and Slide, and a lot of these songs are they're just sort of throwing out these ideas of remembering and like reminiscence, and then you finish the album with this beautiful, beautiful song called Sunrise. think is that in bonus track? That
The last track is called Peace.
Peace Wadad. Right. Sunrise is before. That's also a beautiful song, but Peace is just. That's it. That's why I believe that this is going to be the last album Extreme ever releases, because they've found their peace with this final album. They were missing their art, and they wanted to get closure. And this album is the band's closure, and it's also the story's closure, the story of life. This is death. This is the end of not only a really underrated band, but also of a profound story. And you can't even like be sad about it, because even in the end there's only peace.
And you have 5 excellent albums to return
to as well.
They still tour though.
Occasionally. They were just in Rhode Island not too long ago.
The Melody Tent in the Cape.
Yep.
Oh, this is on the Cape, alright.
And may I add, Gary Sharon is definitely one of the most underrated singers.
Definitely. He was
in Van Halen for a brief period of time.
A little bit.
Yeah.
He's on the album Van Halen 3.
And Nuno Betancourt, what a guitar player, man.
Oh
Yeah.
my. He really just brings it all together. He's a guitar player. He writes a lot of the songs. He's very technically proficient, but perhaps one of the most emotional players that I've ever had the pleasure of hearing. You can just feel his guitar playing.
Currently playing with Rihanna. It's true.
Yep.
Hey, you do what you got to do.
I mean, yeah, like I said before, when Branden first laid down that sort of interpretation of the band's discography,
That blew my mind just now, Brandon.
It blew my mind when I first heard it.
I kind of thought, oh, they're just an ordinary. I mean, I knew they were good, but I never thought it was that deep.
Such a good way to illustrate, the fact that they are an underrated and underappreciated band. They're really a lot more, in depth and more interesting of an artist than their radio singles or their reputation would give them the credit for.
And if you're just looking at like individual titles, like No More Than Words is a very pretty love song, all right? They're
with the acoustic guitar, yeah.
But then you look at Cynical Fuck and you're like, oh, they're just some nasty grunge band. But then you go and you look at like Mother, Don't Want to Go to School Today. Oh, so they're hair metal or funk or whatever, and
yeah.
or you can look at something from Pornography, like any of the more pornographic titles, and you'll be like, they're just nasty kids. But when you take it all together, you really see the whole picture. They're not any of these individual things.
It's very deep.
That's why it's really hard to pinpoint a genre to Extreme, because they just go wherever life takes them, and it flows. It really just flows.
I'm actually looking right now. Okay, the most reliable resource in the world, Wikipedia, which is on my laptop out of the corner of my eye, and I read this about the band's name. Extreme is a takeoff of Sharon and Geary's, the drummer Paul Geary's former band, The Dream, and Extreme meaning X Dream.
Oh.
So I guess that's how their name came to be. But
interesting.
It is a fitting name for the band because their music is so, virtuosic, so, at times in your face, but also at times very lavish, very grandiose, and like we've demonstrated here, very conceptual and very well thought out. But like we've been saying for all these bands, these are bands that we really think you should check out, that we think you'd enjoy, and if I weren't already a huge Extreme fan, I would be very tempted to become one after Branden's marvelous thesis paper via speech on
I
the
wish
band.
I could write a coherent thesis paper on that.
Maybe I will someday.
Oh, you could do it.
I'll live spiritually
times.
through you.
I would love for you to do something like that. Your writing is fantastic.
And that would require me to listen to the album time and time again, which would be a very pleasant way to spend work hours.
Yeah?
Man, right now I just want to go listen to Extreme. So I'm going to sign off for now because we have to go listen to some Extreme. We're going to listen to some live. We might throw a few Cheap Trick songs in there. We're going to rock out. We're going to jam out. And maybe we'll make a mashup album in tribute to Mouth Sounds.
I bet you're jealous. All you people listening.
They're so jealous of me.
Why should they be jealous? They can go listen to Extreme right now if they want.
I'm sure they're on Spotify, but I got the whole discography on compact disc. So come at me, get at me, and we will return next episode.
Dan Griffin signing off.
Branden Denise signing off.
And I am Jarrod White. This was InGroove, a music podcast.
See you real soon, guys.
See you soon.
Enjoy yourself.
Have a wonderful